ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu. What was told to us in the beginning of Naruto to be the big three types of jutsu. And while for the duration of Naruto, we got a heaping filling of ninjutsu and taijutsu and even nin taijutsu from ninjas from the cloud, with things like the Rasengan, Chidori, Drunken Fist, the Eight Gates being used almost every single episode. It feels as though one of those three types of main jutsu got forgotten. You see, in the early days of Naruto, genjutsu was used almost as commonly as taijutsu or ninjutsu, with Kurenai trying to place Itachi under genjutsu, Itachi reversing it, the entirety of the Colosseum watching the final part of the Chunin exams getting placed under genjutsu, Itachi placing Kakashi in Tsukiyomi, Kakashi implying that Sakura's incredible chakra control will help her in genjutsu one day. We even got an entire filler arc based around Kurenai in the Kurama clan, the Kurama clan being a clan that lives within Konoha that are known for their genjutsu prowess. And once every couple of generations, they produce an heir that's able to make genjutsu a reality. Yes, in the early days of Naruto, it appeared as though genjutsu was going to be one of the big three types of jutsu. Yet as time went on, the promise of genjutsu being one of the major players in the power systems of Naruto slowly but surely faded away, until we got to Naruto Shippuden, where genjutsu really just became a thing of the past, only ever used in ultimate type moves like the Tsukiyomi or Kodo Matsukame or the demonic toad chant. And this lack of genjutsu we got in the later stages of Naruto not only was a massive bummer, but also led a lot of people to ask, how does genjutsu even really work in the first place? With the most common questions that I get, how does somebody like Kurenai, for example, who doesn't have ocular dojutsu, cast a genjutsu in the first place? How do genjutsus work? Why can ninjas break themselves out of some genjutsus and not others? And all of these are really good questions that the anime and the manga don't do a great job of answering. So today, you and me are gonna sit down and have a long conversation about genjutsu, how it works, what it does to the people it's inflicted upon, how you break out of it, the different kinds, and most importantly, why it was left out of the story of Naruto. But before we get into all that, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And while you're feeling generous, I kind of just wanted to show Calcifer off. Go ahead and follow my other YouTube channel, The Weeb Commander, or instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk about all other anime. Doing a whole lot of Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan. Gotta hit it while the iron's hot. And if you like the idea of me talking about other anime, go ahead and follow my brand new podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Bana break down everything that happened in anime this week. So, genjutsu, one of the scariest things that can happen to you in the Naruto universe. At its most benign, it puts you to sleep. And at its most malignant, it puts you in a 72-hour repeatable time series where you get stabbed on a cross. Genjutsu, as the average Naruto fan understands it, is usually ocular, meaning it comes from somebody's eyes. Meaning that the only way to be cast into genjutsu is to make eye contact with a Sharingan wielder. And while this is absolutely the most common kind of genjutsu we see throughout the duration of Naruto, mostly because Uchihas play a huge role in the story of Naruto, this is by no means the story of all genjutsu. So what is genjutsu? How does it work? And how broad of a world is it outside of the confines of just ocular genjutsu, which we're also going to talk about? Well, to dive into that, we're gonna have to start this video off in the way that we tend to start these kinds of videos off, at the beginning. See, we've already established that genjutsu is one of the three main types of jutsu that use chakra: Tai, Nin, Gen. However, unlike ninjutsu or taijutsu, the effects of genjutsu usually are not real. There are circumstances where the effects of genjutsu are real, and we'll talk about those. Genjutsu usually isn't real because genjutsu is a yin release. And yin release uses the spiritual energy side of chakra, as chakra is created out of two components: spiritual energy and physical energy. When these two components come together, you create chakra. Yin release uses spiritual energy to control imagination, to create form out of nothingness. So in layman's terms, the creation and manipulation of non-physical things. This is why genjutsu falls under the yin release category. As with simply the use of yin release, you can create your imagination. However, that creation is not physical. With the power of genjutsu, I could create the image of this phone in your mind. But without the power of yin yang release, I could never make this phone physical, as yin yang release is giving sustenance to your imagination, like Izanagi or the creation of all things jutsu. Another good example of yin release is the Nara clan's shadow technique, as they use yin release to control and manipulate their shadows. And while technically their shadows do have a physical form because they're able to pick up kunai and chakra knives and strangle people, shadows themselves are technically non-physical objects. And thus the broad terminology of yin release is applied to them because the shadows are being manipulated in an imaginative way. Now that we know what genjutsu is, let's talk about how genjutsu works. See, all genjutsu, regardless of how they're cast, work the same. A genjutsu is meant to attack somebody's cerebral nervous system, specifically the chakra flow of an opponent's cerebral nervous system. See, since chakra is basically life force in Naruto, it's involved in everything, which is why if you run out of chakra, you die. Therefore, chakra is responsible for running your cerebral nervous system, and your cerebral nervous system is what controls your 5 senses, which means that by altering the chakra flow to the cerebral nervous system, you can create illusions or feelings that aren't actually there. As if you're in control of somebody's cerebral nervous system, you are in control of their entire body. You're in control of what they do, what they see, what they smell, what they taste, and what they feel. Meaning you can impart the feeling of pain, or you can have them believe they're nailed to a cross getting stabbed for 72 hours. And because genjutsu takes control of somebody's entire being, basically, things like time dilation are very much a possibility, as demonic toad chant and Tsukiyomi have been shown to slow time to somebody's individual perception. In fact, we learned in the anime from Shino that genjutsu affects the entire forebrain. Now, the forebrain anatomically is the most forward part of your brain, specifically the front 1/3, as the brain is split into 3 sections: the front, the middle, and the back. Now, was genjutsu affecting the forebrain anatomically the smartest thing for Kishimoto to do? Not necessarily, as the forebrain is mostly concerned with temperature regulation, eating, sleeping, and the displaying of emotions. Technically, genjutsu should affect the midbrain, as the midbrain is what controls vision, hearing, motor control. But Kishimoto's a mangaka, not a doctor. But because genjutsu affects the entirety of the midbrain and therefore 1/3 of your brain, genjutsu actually works on all species of animals, meaning genjutsu works as effectively on humans as it does on dogs. As even though brains of different animals vary pretty widely, genjutsu catching a whole third of a human brain means there's going to be enough similarity between a human brain and every other species' brain to put any other species in genjutsu. The only exception to this rule is the kikaichu, which is the base insect for the abarame. You know, the ones they use to make walls or wings or really anything. Those are the kikaichu. Shino explained to us in the anime that since bugs operate basically only using their senses and don't have much of a brain, that they don't even notice genjutsu, making all insects in the Naruto universe immune to genjutsu, which, non-surprisingly, also makes most abarame highly resistant to genjutsu. As since the kikaichu feed on the chakra of the abarame, they can understand when the abarame are placed under genjutsu. And also, since they feed on this chakra, they themselves also have chakra. And therefore, since the abarame basically replace their own chakra networks with bugs, because the bugs live inside of them, it's actually very hard to place an abarame member under genjutsu, since the bugs in their body can't be placed under genjutsu, and therefore their chakra network really can't be affected that well by genjutsu, which not only gives the abarame a natural resistance to genjutsu, but also a heightened detection of it, should they hypothetically actually be placed under it. Now, this might actually only apply to the kikaichu though. As in Itachi's second light novel, he places Yoji Abarame under Tsukiyomi by paralyzing all of the bugs in Yoji Abarame's body with Tsukiyomi, showing us that genjutsu very much worked on the bugs in Yoji Abarame's body, and this is for one of 2 reasons. One, it's because it's Tsukiyomi and it's one of the most powerful genjutsu on Earth. Or 2, because Yoji Abarame didn't actually use kikaichu. Yoji Abarame used a specific kind of bug known as a kochu, a microscopic and poisonous bug that he used to poison and subsequently kill Shisui with. But for whatever of these 2 reasons, Yoji Abarame's bugs were placed into Tsukiyomi. So who really knows? So now that we know how genjutsu works and what it affects, let's talk about what genjutsu does. See, genjutsu in its most basic form can affect the 5 senses. It can make you see things that aren't there, feel things that aren't there, smell things that aren't there, hear things that aren't there, and so on and so forth. But genjutsu at its highest levels is often used to manipulate people. And when you talk about genjutsus that manipulate people, the obvious choice is things like Kodo Matsukame, or whatever genjutsu Obito used on Yagura. Genjutsu specifically tailored around brainwashing other people, and more than anything, brainwashing other people without them knowing about it. But we learned while Killer Bee was battling against Blue Bee during the war arc, the genjutsu that aren't meant to brainwash people can still be used to brainwash people. Most specifically, that by placing somebody under a genjutsu over and over and over again, you can begin to condition them. By molding a person's mind to make them see exactly what you want them to see, as you're in control of their 5 senses, you can slowly but surely begin to warp their worldview. Orochimaru did this by slipping Blue Bee, the previous Jinchuriki of the 8 Tails before Killer Bee, special genjutsu pills. These special genjutsu pills activated a genjutsu on Blue Bee whenever he fell asleep. That not only cast him into a life of dismay, but also more often than not made him lose control of the 8 Tails, which is why Gyuki was known as being notoriously hard to control in the Hidden Cloud. But that brings me to one of the most important talking points for today's video. How is genjutsu placed? How do you cast a genjutsu onto your opponent? And the answer is there's a lot of different ways. Well, obviously you can have your target ingest something like Orochimaru did with Blue Bee, and there's obviously ocular genjutsu like the genjutsu of the Sharingan and the Ketsurigan, where in both circumstances, if you make eye contact with somebody with ocular dojutsu that confer genjutsu abilities, they're able to cast you into a genjutsu immediately. And ironically, even though ocular dojutsu might seem like the strongest form of genjutsu casting, it's not. Actually, what's deemed to be the strongest way to cast genjutsu onto your opponents is audible genjutsu. The best examples we have of audible genjutsu users are Tayuya and Ma and Pa. Tayuya has ability known as demonic flute, and Tayuya, with the power of this demonic flute, was able to use an ability known as phantom sound chains, where anybody within hearing distance of the song she was playing on her flute will be placed in a genjutsu, and anybody upon being placed in this genjutsu had the illusion of having their limbs chained, and then their limbs would begin to melt, which instantly paralyzes anybody who's unfortunate enough to hear this song. The other example of audible genjutsu is demonic illusion toad confrontation chant. Now, this is a sound-based genjutsu used by the toads of Mount Muabuko, and it's a song whose musical score has been passed down throughout the generation. However, the song is incredibly complex, and therefore the only two people capable of using it are the two great toad sages, Ma and Pa. And it's not even easy for them to use it, as Ma and Pa have to work in complete harmony, finding the correct tone and singing together to get the song going. However, once Ma and Pa have found harmony and the song does get going, it's one of the strongest jutsu in Naruto, as anybody within earshot who can hear this song, regardless of how powerful they are, fall under its illusion. And the illusion casts anybody who can hear this song into a place where they're surrounded by 4 toad samurai. And these 4 toad samurai keep anyone caught in this genjutsu in a box. And this genjutsu is only over when the users of the genjutsu say it's over, or one of the stone samurai frogs stabs their sword through the heart of the person cast into the genjutsu. And thus it's not consumption or making eye contact with somebody that's the strongest way to cast genjutsu, but through the ears, as it has an incredible range and an ability to catch multiple people at once. But none of these types of genjutsu are easy to use. In fact, genjutsu is probably the hardest type of jutsu to use out of the Tai, Nin, or Gen categories. See, genjutsu requires the most precise chakra control out of all 3 of the categories, as you have to precisely control the chakra networks of somebody who is actively battling against you, controlling their chakra networks. And this is actually the way that most genjutsu is cast. See, most genjutsu isn't auditory or visual or through consumption. Genjutsu works in the same way that ninjutsu or taijutsu works. Take Kurenai, for example. She's the best example of an average genjutsu user. I mean, she's not average. She's actually incredible at genjutsu, but I'm saying average in that she doesn't have a dojutsu. Kurenai, after performing hand seals, is able to essentially enter a chakra-controlled tug-of-war with her opponent, where she begins to try and manipulate the chakra network of somebody she's focused on. This doesn't require eye contact or a song or eating a special pill. It's the same as trying to hit an opponent with a fireball. Kurenai simply projects her chakra into the body of someone else to try and manipulate that chakra network. And if Kurenai's chakra control and intelligence are greater than the person she's trying to influence, she can control their senses. The reason that I say intelligence is crucial here is because making the illusion believable is also a very pivotal part of genjutsu, as the longer that somebody placed under genjutsu believes that they're living their regular life, the longer they don't try to break out of said genjutsu. Meaning that if you can intelligently create a believable genjutsu, you won't have to fight that tug-of-war. Now, obviously, if you have an insanely powerful genjutsu, you don't have to worry about the tug-of-war. You can make it appear as though you're being shackled and your bones are melting, or that you're nailed to a cross, because you know that it's going to take a whole heck of a lot for somebody to break out of your genjutsu. And this is actually why we see genjutsu used so rarely, because having the perfect combination of the intelligence or the genjutsu prowess is rare, which is why Kurenai is actually held in such high esteems in Konoha. Even incredibly talented and powerful ninja like Jiraiya aren't able to cast genjutsu, which is why clans like the Uchiha were so feared, as simply by having a Sharingan, you are able to cast a generic genjutsu, a jutsu simply known as Genjutsu Sharingan, that isn't related to Kodo Matsukame or Tsukiyomi or anything like that. It's just Sharingans can either be the eyes of deception or the eyes of perception, and those who got the eyes of deception or the eyes of illusion were able to cast a generic genjutsu by making eye contact. However, users of the Sharingan aren't the only people who have boosts to their genjutsu abilities. In another of the very long list of reasons why the Hyugas have been disrespected by the entirety of Naruto, Hagoromo revealed to us that the Byakugan actually extends the range of castable genjutsu, meaning that having access to the Byakugan allows you to project your chakra into somebody else's chakra network and control their chakra better, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because being able to see somebody's chakra network makes it a lot easier to control. And yet we saw how many Hyuga members tried to use genjutsu? Zero. I swear, one day I'm gonna sit down and make a whole video of ways the Hyuga clan could have been cooler.
We're the strongest clan in Konoha.
Proceed to do nothing but poke people for 700 episodes. So now that we've established what genjutsu is, how it works, and how you're able to cast it, I want to talk about the varying range of things that can happen to somebody who's been placed under genjutsu. Really, there's two categories. Those who are placed under genjutsu either freeze or continue about their day. Those who freeze usually appear to be unconscious. Either they appear to be sleeping, like what happened when the wide-ranging genjutsu was used on those watching the Chunin exams, or they freeze, like Kakashi when Tsukiyomi was used on him. This type of genjutsu is more directly offensive. It's meant to freeze somebody in their tracks to end a fight, because as you stand there paralyzed, you're a very easy target, meaning that an ally of the genjutsu user could just walk up to you and stab you a bunch in the neck. I don't know why we didn't get more stabbings in the neck in Naruto. Probably because nobody used genjutsu. However, using this type of genjutsu is difficult for a couple of the reasons we talked about previously. One, in order to use this type of genjutsu, you either have to create a believable situation that the people placed under genjutsu don't try to break out of, or have a genjutsu so powerful that the person placed under the genjutsu can't break out of. In either circumstance, the genjutsu caster is also basically frozen while casting this genjutsu, as they are either creating that illusion in your mind to trick you into believing you're still in reality, or they're engaged in the chakra tug-of-war of trying to control your chakra network to keep you under the effects of this powerful genjutsu. Either way, this type of genjutsu requires a continual input of chakra from the genjutsu user. While it is very offensively focused, it requires a lot of input. The second type of genjutsu has you go about your day, where the person placed under genjutsu is still very much able to move. This is most commonly used with the Sharingan, as this type of genjutsu isn't focused on controlling all 5 of your senses, just 1 or 2 of them. This is the kind of genjutsu that Itachi uses very frequently, where you think you're about to stab Itachi, but he explodes into a bunch of crows. Any circumstance similar to that, where the person being placed under genjutsu is still able to move, but they're seeing things that shouldn't be there, that is the latter form of genjutsu. This genjutsu is not only used to trick people into thinking their enemy is somewhere that they're not, but also used to convince the person placed under the genjutsu that things like the landscape they're fighting on could be different, making somebody believe that they're fighting on a flat plain, but in reality, they're slowly inching closer to a 200-foot cliff. The most effective example of this is when Sasuke used this type of genjutsu against Danzo, making Danzo believe that his arm of Sharingan hadn't been used up with his Izanagi's. However, when he tried to use the last Sharingan in his arm for Izanagi, he realized that he had already used it, as Sasuke was casting the genjutsu onto him to give him the illusion of having one more Sharingan than he actually had. But now, obviously, within the capacity of this genjutsu, Danzo could still move. But Sasuke was controlling his chakra network to manipulate one part of his vision. And honestly, this might be one of the strongest application of genjutsu. Barely noticeable key changes that you can use to manipulate your opponent. Because if the changes are too noticeable, then your opponent can simply break themselves out of genjutsu, which is a perfect little segue to the last thing we need to talk about: how do you break yourself out of genjutsu? The first and most prominent way to break yourself out of genjutsu is to disrupt your chakra flow. See, this technique is a bit like unplugging and plugging something back in. Genjutsu attacks your chakra network. Therefore, in order to break yourself out of this disrupted chakra network illusion, you have to basically restart your modem. This is referred to as genjutsu reversal or genjutsu dissipation. In order to break yourself out of genjutsu, you have to first realize you're under genjutsu. You then have to give your chakra network a shock, breaking the flow of chakra in your body and thus destroying the illusion. Now, this can be done by yourself or an ally. See, if an ally realizes that you're under genjutsu, they can simply place their hand on your body and shoot chakra into your system, which is like the Narcan of the Naruto universe. By physically disrupting your chakra with a shot of their own, you break the illusion of the genjutsu. This can also be done by Jinchuriki who have a good relationship with their tailed beast, as the tailed beast, as an independent entity within the Jinchuriki, can use its own chakra to restart their Jinchuriki's chakra network. This is why perfect Jinchurikis are considered immune to genjutsu. They can still be placed under it, but almost as fast as they get placed under it, they're going to get broken out of it. Unless, of course, the user of genjutsu also places the tailed beast under genjutsu, which is what Obito does to Kurama on the night of Naruto's birth. But there's also much simpler ways to break people out of genjutsu, like pain. Pain that's not being caused by the genjutsu often breaks the person placed in genjutsu out of said genjutsu, like the person being placed under genjutsu breaking their own finger or stabbing themselves in the hand. On top of this, users of the Sharingan are basically invulnerable to genjutsu, as the Sharingan allows the user to hone in on the differences between illusion and reality and instantly deduce that they're under a genjutsu. On top of that, users of the Sharingan are also able to break their friends out of genjutsu, as users of the Sharingan are able to insert themselves into other people's illusions, meaning let's say I have a Sharingan and you've been placed under genjutsu. Once I identify that you've been placed under genjutsu, I can use the power of my Sharingan to enter your genjutsu and break you out of it from the inside. On top of that, apparently, according to Datara, you're able to train your eye to break yourself out of genjutsu, which is what Datara did after losing his battle against Itachi because Itachi placed him in genjutsu. So Datara, over a matter of years, trained his eye to be able to break him out of genjutsu. How he did that? We don't know. But now you know everything there is to know about genjutsu. Do you feel as though I've answered all your questions? Do you feel as though there should have been more genjutsu in Naruto? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I get that genjutsu's hard to use. You need to be smart, you need to have incredible chakra control, but Sakura has both of those. Why didn't we at least just give her a couple genjutsu?